Center. So my name is Jordan, and I'm a social worker here at the Thorpe Recovery Center. I provide support to those we serve by facilitating opportunities and resources that will aid them on their recovery journey. The Thorpe Recovery Center is an accredited nonprofit treatment center for those with substance use disorders. And today we have Heather with us. She works for the Lloydminster Sexual Assault Services, and she is a Community Initiatives Director. We'll be referring to the Lloydminster Sexual Assault Services as LSAS throughout this interview. So she has been with LSAS since 2009 in a variety of roles. So thanks again, Heather. I really appreciate you taking the time to let me interview you today. So I'll just start off. So what is the relationship that LSAS has with the Thorpe Recovery Center?
So we've had a pretty long-standing relationship with Thorpe, even before you all were in your new facility. But most recently, primarily is a referral back and forth between organizations. So at times, Thorpe may have clients that have experienced any form of sexual violence or bullying or those kinds of things, which falls in line with our services. And vice versa, we may have clients that are struggling with substance abuse and may need a referral to Thorpe's programming. So that would be one of the ways that we partner together.
Yeah.
In 2020, we started looking at some outreach services into the Thorpe Recovery Center. So we were kind of testing the waters with that, of having one of our crisis interventionists go into Thorpe and do just one session with one of the residents that was referred to our center. And the majority of those sessions just basically looked at maybe answering any questions or concerns about sexual assault programming, any services that they could access after in their home area. So we would provide referrals across Alberta and Saskatchewan with that. And access to crisis line services as well. So those sessions were being done in person and have since been put on pause with some COVID restrictions. So they're still continuing, and we can't wait to continue that partnership moving forward. And I think just one other way would be just through education. I know our staff has taken many of the lunch and learns that you provide, and vice versa. We've been invited in to do some trainings and workshops and educational presentations for your staff too. So even just that staff bridge and getting to know each other is a great way that both organizations partner.
Yeah, exactly. Like having that dual partnership there for sure. Yeah, and I found too, like having you guys like be able to access your resources and your services has been super helpful too, because as we know with addiction, like it's not just addiction, there's that mental health piece, right? And then we look at where that mental health piece has kind of transformed a little bit. And a lot of the time it's due to trauma. It's due to some type of trauma, whether that be sexual assault or not. And so I found, even just from starting working here and bridging that gap a little bit, has been monumental. And I've only heard the clients say good things about you guys whenever they meet with one of you. And so yeah, it's been an awesome working relationship for sure.
That's so good to hear. Thank you.
Yeah, of course. So how long has LSAS been in service, and are you guys a nonprofit organization?
We are a nonprofit organization. We opened our doors in 1982, and we're incorporated in both Alberta and Saskatchewan. Okay. So in terms of number, I think we're in our 37th or 38th year.
Oh, wow.
Of operation, which is just speaks to the longstanding support of our community and volunteerism, and even just the progression of both provinces funding sexual assault programming too, because we have grown so much in those 37 years as well.
Yeah.
We actually did start off as a volunteer organization before we received any sort of funding for our programs too. So it's really interesting to look at the history of where we were and where we are today.
Yeah, and I think it just goes to show how much Lloydminster and surrounding communities needed your guys' services too.
Yes. We do serve a 200-kilometer radius in and around Lloydminster into both provinces too. So it's covering quite a service area for sure. Yeah. And we do have partner sexual assault centers that are across both Saskatchewan and Alberta that cover other geographical areas too. So I know Alberta's really been pushing to have some of that blanket services for sexual assault survivors to have equal access. So those rural communities certainly do benefit from that.
Yeah. And especially like being in a border city too, right? Like being located in a border city, you get both Alberta and Saskatchewan, right? So the service users that you're getting are from both provinces too, which I think is really cool that you get to work with both.
Yeah, absolutely. Learning curves with both, because both provinces have different regulations and reporting obligations to maintain. So lots of assessments within that.
Well, that's always the fun stuff, right?
Yes.
So along with your guys' programming, how has it changed due to COVID?
So primarily it's just shifted to more of a virtual or phone session type of service. So for any of our crisis intervention services would be the individual sessions with a client and a worker. Those have all shifted to phone sessions or through like Google Meet or Zoom, a confidential way of meeting with clients. Some clients did choose to pause their sessions during this time too, just with not wanting to access over the phone, and everyone's going to have their own unique way of coping with this too. With COVID as well, what we've noticed is it's also exacerbating a lot of our clients' impacts. So while they have their trauma that they're coping with, they're now dealing with everything with the pandemic on top of that.
Exactly.
So it makes it challenging to focus on one or the other. It's very intermingled. So lots of crisis support taking place right now. An increase in crisis calls to the center as well. Just needing some of the more immediate support. Other ways that it's shifted with our Little Bear Child and Youth Advocacy Center. So that's where we partner with RCMP and Children's Services to conduct interviews in-house. Those are still taking place with the RCMP initiating that service and deciding when and how the child or youth will be interviewed if there's been a suspicion of child abuse going on. So those are still taking place in our building just because of the immediate nature of how that needs to unfold. And then with our sexual assault response team, so that's where a member of our staff goes into the hospital to support an immediate survivor of sexual assault. We are still offering that service to an extent whereas before COVID, we could stay for the duration of the hospital visit and be that emotional support for the individual. We're not allowed to stay as long. So we pop in, drop off a bag of comfort, which includes clothing, a blanket, stuffed animal resources, snacks, those kinds of things. We can drop that off, introduce ourselves, and just invite that we'll check in a couple of days. So there's definitely been some shifts with COVID. But we've managed as best, I think, as everyone can right now. We did launch a YouTube channel, and I'm going to say this, but it was on April 15th, and I feel like that was just yesterday, but that was almost a year ago.
That's so cool. I did not know that.
Yeah, so we've been staffed to 3 to 4 videos a week. So there's quite a few educational and informative resources and activities and yoga and that sort of thing that's all on the YouTube channel. So that's a way to provide education, stay connected to the community, and even just have a resource for our clients to utilize as well.
Yeah, no kidding. Yeah, I love that. After this interview, Heather, I would love for you to send me the link and we can post it to this interview as well. Yeah, that would be fantastic.
Great.
Yeah, for sure. And so along with the services that you've kind of touched on already, so what, like in a nutshell, what services do you all offer, and are there fees to these services? So I know you've mentioned a few already, but
so with the way the center has grown, we've actually not really separated, but we have 3 divisions. So first and foremost is our Sexual Assault Services division, which focuses on individual support for children, youth, and adults and families who've experienced sexual violence, family violence, or bullying. So that can look like individual sessions, pre-COVID, both in-house and via outreach, confidential outreach locations. Those are all free for service. So there's no fees for any of that. We're funded by both provincial governments and municipal governments and those sorts of things that help keep our doors open for these clients. And so we're working towards, in those programs, looking at like healing opportunities, coping with trauma symptoms, understanding how the sexual violence has impacted their lives and kind of reintegrating that into their next steps.
Right.
With that program also comes a multiple sub-programs too. So we have our police and court support program, which is a program that those who are accessing the justice system will have crisis interventionists and court advocates that will attend court with them, do court prep sessions, those kinds of things. Within that is our sexual assault response team, which I mentioned as well. Right. And then our sexual behavior program. So that's for children under the age of 12 who are exhibiting sexual behaviors and need some additional supports to kind of figure out some ways to cope in a healthy way. And then also encouraging safety within the family as well. So, and then sub-programs also include like body science. So those are for our kiddos who maybe they haven't experienced sexual abuse, but it's so good to have that knowledge about okay and not okay touches, the proper names of the private parts, identifying feelings, understanding how our alarm brain and our calm brain work. So that would be some examples of some of the kiddo programming that we have too. So then we have our Little Bear Child and Youth Advocacy Center. So that is a multidisciplinary approach to child abuse. So if there is a suspicion of or disclosure of child abuse in our community, children or youth, we don't want to forget the youth, then they can actually have their interview take place at our center. So it's a really safe, comfortable, comforting way to meet with our CMP, Crown prosecutors, or children's services and navigate a time that can be really unknown and unsettling for children, youth, and families. So they're set up with a Little Bear advocate will tour them through the center. Children and youth can go into the toy room, which is just floor to ceiling toys. Thank you to Boundary Forward and Rescue Squad and all the folks that donate all that. And they can pick a toy or a stuffy or blankets and bring that home. So it really creates a different experience for those that are navigating the interview and justice system, and actually promotes a sense of healing and stability within that too. So and then the third division would be our North Riken Enhanced Services. So that looks at issues like self-harm, anger resolution, self-esteem. We have our trauma-informed yoga program under there too. Emotional freedom tapping, EMDR would be another program under that too. And then our reconnection program, which looks at healing intimate connections. So kind of a step beyond the trauma healing, but kind of reintegrating sexual intimacy and that type of healing into our world. So the North Riken stuff is just kind of a bit of an expansion of unique healing modalities for our community. So
no, you guys got a lot going on. I love it. I did not know that there were so many like different areas within LSAS. I wanted to touch on the educational piece from what you said, because a lot of what you like the services that you guys are providing, this isn't stuff that is in like a school curriculum, right? So where else are children and youth like supposed to get this information from?
For sure. So we do have a wide variety of educational presentations for children, youth, adults, and professionals. And that ranges from everything from understanding what okay and not okay touches are, to child abuse impacts, to relationships and social media, consent, sexual harassment, exploitation. There's quite a list of topics that we do. So our educators typically would go into schools or businesses and do they're about an hour presentations to educate. And what we find is knowing about consent, knowing about what child sexual abuse is in age appropriate language can actually have a child understand that maybe they could talk about what might be happening for them.
Right.
So it provides like a safe opening for disclosures to take place, and people to access some of the resources that they didn't know existed in our community or in our organization.
Right.
So those are all free for service, or free as well for the community to access and funded by various areas. And then we do have group programs very similar for girls and boys empowerment groups, self-esteem groups, an ongoing coffee group, again, pre-COVID. So that's kind of some fun opportunities there. And then we do offer multiple trainings and workshops. So at times there are fees for services, kind of depending on what that looks like for some of those. But businesses can host them as like a private one. We are offering a lot of them over Zoom right now for free in condensed versions, but just really want community members to access the information. And then we do have our first responders to sexual assault and abuse training, which is a 2-day certificate training, which all of Thorpe took just at the end of 2020, which was an awesome way to participate and partner and get to know you guys.
Exactly, that was wonderful.
And then the last one is our Teaching Boundaries and Consent workshop, which is a free one, but a 1-day workshop for parents and caregivers.
Right.
And it just educates on how to talk to your kids about boundaries, consent, sexual intimacy, dating, relationships. And that one's quite fun. We're actually offering it in April over 3 days to parents that want to register over Zoom. So
that's fantastic, especially because like not all kids or like youth are going to be comfortable going to their parents and asking these questions, or like their friends or loved ones, right? So almost getting that information from a third party makes it feel more safe and more comfortable too.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So along with that, are there any requirements to enter your programming?
Yes and no. So we don't turn anybody away if they have experienced any form of violence, sexual violence, bullying, that kind of thing. Right. We work with all genders, all age groups, cultural diversity, everything. We're quite inclusive at the center, and all of our staff receive some really excellent training on kind of progressive thinking and able to support multiple unique experiences that people go through.
For sure.
We do not work with adults who have offended sexually, so that would be one area that our center does not provide services for.
Yeah, for sure. And are there any expectations for individuals when they enter programming? I guess more so maybe for adults who are doing one-on-one work or anything like that?
Expectations, no. So we are very client-centered, client-focused. So if you and I were in a session, I'm basically encouraging you to take the lead and let me know when and if you feel ready to share your story. Our crisis interventionists, there's no expectation for any of our clients to actually share what happened to them.
Right.
Half the time we might not even know the historical context of what brought them there. We're coping with the day-to-day. And we honor the time and the space needed to build that rapport, to feel comfortable, to start that healing process. And it's going to look different from person to person. Right. So no, there are no expectations in terms of how healing should look or what those sessions should look like. And I think one of the great things about our crisis interventionists too is we'll case plan with the client. Right. So what are some of your goals? What are you hoping to see shift or grow or heal within your world? Right. And we'll try and meet them where they're at in that sense.
Yeah, exactly. I was just going to say that, like meeting the client where they're at. So not pushing them to complete anything that they just aren't ready to, or to share anything that they're not ready to. So really just allowing them to organically like come out of their shell if they so choose.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I like that. And are there any preconceived barriers that you've noticed for your programming that potential clients should not be concerned about?
Well, I think just, so Lloydminster Sexual Assault Services, sometimes the name in itself is just scary. People don't talk about sexual violence unless you're in the field and you're kind of coping with this and working with it day to day. So I think sometimes even just the name can trip folks up from accessing services or thinking, even just deciding, is that what happened to me? I'm not quite sure. Do I actually need to call in? And so we just encourage calling, chat with someone, meet the staff, we just relaunched our website too, so there's some great information on there to help people get to know who we are a little bit.
Right.
But I think just understanding too that yes, we are a sexual assault center, but we're also so much more than that too. Yes. We have such a wide variety of services to help our community and to meet folks where they are at. So even if people just, my one example is parents who may not know how to talk to their kids about this type of stuff, but know it's important. Bring them in for a few sessions. They're not, a 9-year-old can come learn about body science and, you know, understanding their body from head to toe and the proper names of the private parts and those kinds of things. So there is room for all of that, whether you've experienced sexual violence or not.
Yeah.
As a community, in order to change a lot of these impacts and the prevalence of sexual violence issues, it's actually have these conversations and learn about them.
Yeah.
So we really encourage people to kind of discover that and come on in and see what we're all about.
For sure. Yeah. It's like that, and that educational piece is so important, right? And kind of like how we discussed briefly before, like that bridging the gap, right? And that's kind of where that comes into play.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then my last question for you, Heather, do you guys have any like wellness plans? And if so, what are they?
So I think that kind of just fits in depending on the program that someone might be accessing. So our vision is help, hope, and healing. So that is a foundation for so much of our programming, is just seeking that help, knowing that we have hope for healing, basically, if you want to be super cheesy like that. But it's such a beautiful message that it's the undertone of all of our programs. So I know, for example, our Reconnection program is one of the ones that I'm quite involved in at this point. It's just an additional layer to healing that we can provide survivors. So as much as we want to look at, let's say, the PTSD symptoms of a sexual assault and manage those and cope with those, we also want to look at, okay, but now what's next? Yeah. How do I engage in a healthy body image right now? How do I engage emotionally and physically with another person and feel safe?
Yeah.
So that would be considered like a wellness plan going forward.
Right. Okay, that makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah, and then even just what I mentioned with body science, from, let's say, a 9-year-old that's never experienced abuse, but their parents bring them in for education. That's laying foundation for healthy relationships for the future, because this kiddo is understanding boundaries and what consent looks like. So I would consider that a wellness plan too. So it's kind of integrated and woven in through a lot of our programs and services.
Yeah, definitely. And it's almost like planting that seed too, right? Like from teaching this one child, they may grow up and then teach their children the same thing.
Exactly.
Right? Which I love. Yeah,
I love it too. That cycle of healing. Yeah, exactly. How it translates out, and
yeah, I know, I love it. We might not see it grow, but we know that it will eventually. We'll see the seed being planted, but we might not see the overall growth of it, right?
Yeah, fair enough.
Just hope that it's happening.
Yeah, help, hope, healing. Yep.
Yeah, exactly. I love that. Before we wrap up here, Heather, I just wanted to give you the chance to maybe talk about anything we hadn't mentioned yet, or there's any last thoughts that you have that you wanted to touch on?
I don't think so. I feel like I've shared quite a bit at this point. And sometimes, you know, when you're in the moment, you share and you're often wondering, like, did I touch on everything? So if there's anything I missed, I do apologize. But like I said, we'll link the YouTube channel and our new website to check out. We have more pages that will kind of be launched in the coming weeks as well. So lots of great opportunity for people to check out what we're all about too.
Definitely. And so with the easiest way to access your guys' services is by going to your website first and foremost and checking out that?
It just depends on comfort level. So we have a self-referral button on the website that people can just actually enter in their information, and it gets sent over to our intake worker. We do have staff in the building on a rotational schedule right now. So our business hours Monday to Friday, 8:30 to 4. Folks can call in and speak directly with a crisis interventionist or whomever might be in for the day and do an intake that way. So, yeah.
Perfect. And like I said before too, we will be linking all that information, your website, the YouTube, all in this interview, so it's easily accessible for everybody.
Great.
But I just wanted to thank you again, Heather, for coming on this segment of Coffee with our Community Connections during COVID. say that 10 times fast. It is a mouthful, but I'm getting it memorized now. But yeah, again, just thank you. We appreciate the continued partnership with you guys and all the work that you're doing out in our communities.
Thanks. We feel the same way about you guys and appreciate the opportunity just to even be here and be present with you. So thanks so much.
Yes, thank you.